it's not often that somebody comes along who not only rises to the call of his times once, but importantly during the height of a moment or a movement, meaning the 60s. But he's done it now twice, because now in these days, we need someone like James Baldwin more than ever, so he is invoked constantly if you start listening for it. This important movement to make equality and goodness a reality is something that I think is very much needed. And I wish that Baldwin could have been recognized for his writing alone, because that would mean that the struggle was over, that we would recognize him for his eloquence and his intelligence, his immaculate choice of words, and the beauty of his expression. The Baldwin family, who I've had the good fortune to speak with, and also to the Baldwin estate, Eileen Ahern, who has been so helpful, and I wanted to acknowledge, they emphasized that they were honored, that he was being honored by the colony for his writing. Because this library is a symbol of all the various talents that Baldwin had. Poetry, he loved film, he loved, literature, of course. He loved music. He loved all the things that MacDowell is, which is why I think he thought of this place as a place he could be and feel at home. He and Polly Murray were the first two African Americans to come to the colony back in 1954. And just the other day, Kevin at the Schomburg Center did a wonderful evening about Polly Murray and her incredible impact on our culture and society. And I invite you to learn more about Polly Murray as well. So I wanted to say that when the day comes when we're not struggling, his writing, we hope, will be picked up by his fellow artists who are in residence, and as Florence said, that's already starting to happen. He's being brought back into his rightful place. We're particularly excited about the Baldwin family donation of the amazing portrait of him as a young man. It was done by his longtime friend and painter, Beaufort Delaney. There are many Delaney portraits hanging in museums, and this one is marvelous because it is joyful and it shows Baldwin's, what I call his hope of heart. Despite it all, he loved his fellow man. So please do look at us when you walk in. Obviously, there's much more work to do in recognizing talent and keeping the culture representative of all of our fellow citizens. The Baldwin Initiative that you'll be hearing more about is designed to help bring the opportunity of MacDowell to every talented person we can. And the MacDowell mission was written like the Constitution, in a timeless way, a timeless value system of equity, that no social distinction shall determine who makes use of the place. The colony is quintessentially American in that regard, and a national treasure that each generation has a responsibility to ensure. We've done pretty well so far, but it is up to all of us, and I hope you'll pass it on to your children and young friends. And I want to now introduce Kevin Young. I said last night when we gathered that there was no one better in the country to talk about Baldwin, literature, and our culture, and Baldwin's impact on his culture, on this culture. Kevin, who has been in residence at MacDowell 6 times between 1993 and 2013, is the award-winning author of 13 books of poetry and prose, and editor of 8 others. He's a busy man. His nonfiction book, Bunk, won the Ainsfield Wolf Prize, was longlisted for the National Book Award, a finalist for the Penn Gene Stein Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award in Criticism, and was a New York Times notable book. His latest book of poems, Brown, was recently featured on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. He is now the director of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture and the poetry editor of The New Yorker. I welcome Kevin Young.
good afternoon or good morning. It's so great to see everyone. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. Notes of a native son. No name in the street. Giovanni's room. Go tell it on the mountain. The devil finds work. The fire next time. Another country. The price of the ticket. If Beale Street could talk. The titles alone of James Baldwin's essays, novels, stories, and dare I say prophecies evoke everything from the African-American literary tradition to American and biblical folk sayings, Negro spirituals, to the blackest blues. Knowing that several of these works, among them my favorite novel, Giovanni's Room, were written here at the MacDowell Colony, still inspires, even as it awes. As critic Darrell Pinckney put it, there is something wild in the beauty of Baldwin's sentences and the cool of his tone, something improbable, too, this meeting of Henry James, the Bible, and Harlem. It is that meeting we are celebrating today in the dedication of this beautiful library, joining the old and the new, the cathedrals of the past with the pastures of the future. Among these woods that still whisper and his voice that both comforts and challenges us. I think of Toni Morrison, his friend who wrote an eulogy for him and for his language that lives on. This is Morrison. You knew, didn't you, how I needed your language and the mind that formed it? How I relied on your fierce courage to tame wildernesses for me? How strengthened I was by the certainty that came from knowing you would never hurt me? You knew, didn't you, how I loved your love? You knew. Then this is no calamity. No, this is Jubilee. Our crown, you said, has already been bought and paid for. All we have to do, you said, is wear it. Here at MacDowell, I dare say that Baldwin found part of that crown and helped craft it through writing Giovanni's Room and others of his masterpieces that carry the crown and carry us along. His words certainly live on. But we also live in them. Baldwin's expansive capacity in his prose and by all accounts his person tames wildernesses the way the MacDowell Colony does. Not to say this place isn't still wild and welcoming, but it's tame yet frisky, like the resident director David Macy's dog. Or like the cats I first got to know here roaming these grounds, Art and Deco. They were some of the first cats I got to know, and being more of a dog person that I came to really like. I like to think they roam here still, much in the way that the colony records and keeps the names of those who were here over the century and more, that has provided a safe haven, a place Baldwin, who was here 3 times from 1954 to 1960, called, quote, his favorite sanctuary for writing. Sanctuary is something we need more of. Sanctuary is what I felt returning here as a colonist all this week. Sanctuary is something I wish Baldwin could help us to find in today's turbulent world, here and now. Sanctuary to me is a library. Baldwin thought so too. Quote, you think your pain and heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. I have the good fortune in one of my other lives of being the director of a library, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, part of the New York Public Library, located in Harlem. It's just steps from where he was born. And it was the very library that he said he read every book in. We've been around 93 years, so MacDowell has us beat in terms of age. But just last year, we became the home of James Baldwin's personal papers, 40 linear feet of drafts and discussions of yellow-lined paper covered in his distinctive hand, typewritten poems and plays and novels, page proofs, and a larger proof of his industry and effort, all of which a place like MacDowell helped make possible. When the papers returned to the Harlem of his birth, I felt he was coming home. With the dedication of this tremendous library filled with 15,000 books, recordings, musical scores, films, and visual works created by past fellows, including him, James Baldwin has come full circle once again. His work and its efforts to see with those big eyes of his, to read people and situations as well as books, is still alive here. I like to think that our two libraries are now forever linked. For what we must remember is that libraries, and indeed literature, music, art, is alive. It remains so, as long as you can open a book and discover what awaits, can plug in and listen to a composer no longer with us but with us always, as long as we can open these doors and enter into a place of words and art and endless music, a place very much like Baldwin's writing itself. Baldwin is for the ages because he remains current without worrying about being stylish. He lasts like the MacDowell colony does because he too has managed to artfully incorporate change with constancy. As he said in his early autobiographical notes, "I love to eat and drink. It's my melancholy conviction that I've scarcely ever had enough to eat. This is because it's impossible to eat enough if you're worried about the next meal. And I love to argue with people who do not disagree with me too profoundly. And I love to laugh." MacDowell provides a place where that worry about meals is all but gone. And you get to agree with people who don't disagree too profoundly, or at least loudly. And oh, how we love to laugh. James Baldwin is one of our greatest writers, and may his spirit and memory bless the MacDowell colony and the newly dedicated James Baldwin Library, a sanctuary of art, writing, and life evermore.